It's Life Chats with Maggie and Bunny. I'm Maggie.
And I'm Bunny.
Hi, Bunny. How excited are you today for our guest today?
I'm so
What?
excited.
I am super excited. Today, folks, we have with us Marybeth Haines. Marybeth Haines got her start in animal communication as a very young child, as a toddler, in fact. And it wasn't until adulthood that she came to realize just how much that would be useful for her and just how much the animals prepared her for her purpose. And that was to be a conduit for messages of guidance and inspiration. Today, Mary Beth is an award winning animal communication specialist, an author, a certified coach, a pet bereavement facilitator, and a teacher. She can help you find out the reason why you and your animal are together. Why did you find each other? And other various lessons to do with that. Mary Beth is also the host of Awaken with the Animals podcast, sharing inspiration and channeling from some very special beings. It is always the intention of Mary Beth to bring forward the animal's wisdom for the highest and best of all. And she invites us to be part of that as well. Today, we welcome you, Mary Beth. We're so excited to have you here. Bunny and I have both experienced the work that you do, and it's just incredible. Mary Beth helped me with my own dog, Connor, who suffered from anxiety to the point that he was having seizures when I would host events at my home, and there was a lot of spiritual energy or a lot of energy. And she helped us to figure out what that was all about. And it was fabulous. So today we welcome you, Mary Beth. We're so happy that you could be here with us to talk about this and share with the world what it is you do. So for the next 30 seconds or so, or half an hour, just tell us about what's on your heart and what it is and why you do what you do.
Oh, so Maggie and Bunny, I, we chatted a few minutes before we recorded here, and I just told you how happy I am. Just thank you so much for asking me to be on here with you guys. I'm so grateful for this time together. Um, you know, I, where do I start? I think it's kind of like, whenever somebody asks me a question or, kind of get going, it brings me back, and it always brings me back to childhood. It always brings me back to being a small child, and I'm always being brought back there. And I find that in anything that I've gone through in life, there was always an animal that was present in some form. It was there to help, to assist, to teach, to learn, to grow, to facilitate, to experience. And it's funny because before, as I was preparing for us to get together today, I kept having this thing coming through my head, and it was saying, "What's your story? Like, what is your story, Mary Beth?" And I'm like, well, I have many stories actually, right? Because there's so many situations that we go through, there's so many experiences that we have, and we can create many stories from that because it's those experiences that we attach meaning to. And so when it comes to me, again, I keep getting brought back to childhood. And so it's like, you know, I talk with animals, I communicate with animals. It's something that's very normal to me. It's very natural to me, but it's because it's always been, right? It's kind of like it was never different. I just didn't understand that that's what I was doing back then. And I didn't understand the spaces that the animals held for me.
Right.
So I mean, to start out with, that's just what's coming forward right now.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I
It's
remember, and I see your book, the same one I have here behind you.
Awesome.
And I remember the story that you told us the first time that I met you about the fish tank. That
Yes, yes,
the little fish talking to you. And it
yes.
was so cool to me, and it just intrigued me that, yeah, animals can talk to us.
Yeah.
They can.
They do. And they, I think it's just because we live in a world where we're taught that this is how we talk. This is how we communicate. There's these noises that we make. There's these words, the way that we move our mouths to articulate different sounds, and then we attach a meaning to them. Of course, there's the body language, right? So, Bunny and Maggie, I'm talking, you're nodding your heads, right? So you're communicating in that way as well. There's so much, and we become so used to that. But there's so much more to communication than just that. And animals like that fish. And what a good memory. That was awesome. I was at an appointment and I was in the dentist office and I was sitting right by the fish tank. And all of a sudden, I'm getting like this energetic nudge, like bopping me in the ear. And I'm like looking, and there is this fish that told me this most amazing message of hope. It was at a time where there was a lot that was going on in the world. I mean, we're kind of having that ongoing, but there was something specific that was going on. And that fish told me, I can't make this stuff up. Like, I can't just say, oh, I'm thinking about this or whatever. It came through in such a powerful, beautiful message. And, it brought hope and it brought inspiration from this beautiful, beautiful fish.
There have been so many messages that you have given from different animals, that I have witnessed, that I've experienced, that were so incredible. But it is funny that you kept talking about bringing it back to childhood. And one thing that I kind of realized when I started to take animal communication courses with you is I realized, I was like, when you're a kid, you watch Disney movies, and the Disney princesses usually had animal helpers that they talked to, that they communicated with, and it was perfectly acceptable. And it's that magic that you have as a child, that knowing, that understanding, and that we kind of lose it as we grow up, as we're kind of taught that we have to lose that magic, that stuff, to be in the world, the adult quote unquote world, the way that it is. So it is nice to see that there are a lot of us coming back to that magic, and refining and rediscovering that magic of animal communication is one of them. And it's very, I just love that you help bring that out by also teaching people how to communicate with animals as well. And just always the loving, kind messages that, like you said, like the messages of hope. I have yet to find somebody who said that an animal said something other than, we're here to help, like those kind of things, and the hope. So is that what you see most of the time, is those kind of messages from animals? And I want to say, it's not just animals like that we think of, like our dogs, cats, horses, that, but like you said, fish, but also things like collective, like insects, and that kind of thing, that they all have something to say.
They all have something to say. It is the consciousness from, so we'll say animals, but animals could include a reptile, an insect, all the different, I mean, we're an animal, we're called humans, right? So just, the different forms of being that we are. And there's so much consciousness that we come with. And no matter what we are, from the tallest giraffe to the tiniest ant, there's a purpose for that life experience. There is, some people have different schools of thought on this. I was taught from animal. So let me back up a bit. When I was a child, I was taught that only humans had souls. Animals did not. That was my teaching, right? And I couldn't never understand it. It didn't make sense to me, but that was my teaching. And it was taught to me in a loving way. It wasn't taught to me in a way that, animals are inferior to us. That's just what that teacher of mine was taught, right? And so I've come to learn over the many, many years that, again, tallest giraffe to the tiniest ant, that is a physical experience that a soul has come here to have. And there's a purpose to it all. And to be able to get messages and I hope I'm answering your question, Bunny, because you were saying like, are they always inspirational? Are they always,
Right.
did I understand that correctly?
Yep.
Yeah. And so I'm going to say 90% of the time,
Okay.
absolutely. Sometimes there's other messages that come forward or animals that reach out for help because of different situations that they're in. And I will say though that when a message doesn't feel inspirational, it's because that animal has hasn't yet learned something or hasn't yet been able to come to that point to get to that moment of inspiration.
Right.
And so in those situations, I find that when the animal and whoever, like if that animal is communicating with me, or one of my students, because sometimes my students will come and say, I don't know what to do with this. Like, you know, the animal's telling me this, and how do I, you know, what do I do? And it can be a little frightening because there's so many different situations that we or animals or anyone can find themselves in. And when it comes to those situations where they're really looking for guidance or help or support, I find that every single time it's because there's something that they don't yet understand. So let's say it's an animal that's in fear and they're in that fear mode and they don't know what to do. When they can understand that it's okay to be afraid, but there's something more here, and sometimes I don't know what the answer is, and that's where the additional guidance comes in to help. All of a sudden that it's something that that animal doesn't quite understand about what they're being afraid about. And I know I'm sounding a little cryptic here. I just don't want to,
Oh,
you
that's
know,
okay.
give kind of situations,
For sure.
you know, because of traumatic situations and things
Right.
like that. But in situations like that, when they begin to understand that kind of like the bigger picture as to what's happening and why it's happening, they all of a sudden begin to not become fearful anymore. And that's something that they teach me every single day, because if I'm in a fear mode and somebody's trying to help me with that, I don't get it like animals do. I can't like go, oh, okay, I understand now, right? You know, and begin to just willingly say, okay, I accept,
Right.
right? They're so
Isn't,
accepting.
yeah, isn't that though the same as it is for us as humans? If we're living in fear mode, we're not very inspirational. If we're living in fear mode, we don't usually understand things.
Right.
And it's sometimes harder to see why we're going through something if we're in that fear mode. And that's where I can see that they're not a whole lot different than humans in that way. And even as you said, you can't make this stuff up. And it's the same thing with the things that happen to us in our spiritual journey, in our journey through our life. Sometimes things happen that you just can't make up. And at the same token, I, as a human, and all of us as humans, if we're hurting, we respond by hurt and in that place of hurt, in that place of woundedness. Where if we're healed in a situation, we can work from a place of non-wounding because we're there. And why do we think that animals are any different than that? Because they're on their own journey too, and they're on this earth to learn what they're here to learn. You know,
Absolutely.
I noticed something different once I did learn from you, your teaching. You know, I used to think that when I take my dog for a walk and he sniffs everything, he has to go to every tree to decide if he's going to go pee there. I think he's asking them if it's okay. He's having conversations with those trees because it's so funny to me when I watch him when he does it. It's like he's connected to that tree. When he's, you know, he's not just sniffing to see if another animal is there before him. I really truly believe that he's connected with that tree. And it's the same as us as humans, animals as animals. Those trees have a purpose and they have light and they have energy.
Right.
So why is it unthinkable to me that he might be connecting with them?
And Connor is so very spiritual. I
Yes.
mean, a lot of animals have that, and they are, but Connor, just because I've gotten to know him, you know, through you and working with him and things like that, he has that ability to connect with spirits so deeply. And so it's so cool that you're able to actually observe and witness that, because to a lot of us, we could just see him sniffing around trying to find the right place to pee. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like it's like, okay, Connor, come on, let's keep, you know,
Yeah.
let's find the spot, right? And there's a lot more to it than just that.
And I think there's a whole lot more to that with every animal, because just like me as a human being, I tell people all the time, I'm no different than you. I I don't have any more spiritual gifts than another person has. Maybe some of mine are just open differently than someone else's is, but it's the same thing with Connor. I think all animals have the ability to do that. Whether or not they do that or not is something different. But I think it's like we said in your intro, that you help us to see why those animals are in our life. And I clearly know that in the same way that I am a death doula and work with people who are dying, Connor recognizes that.
Mhm.
You know, I can give you an example. Just this past weekend, my neighbor passed away. Days before she passed away, even weeks before, Connor kept trying to go to her house.
Mhm.
And that isn't the only time this has happened when somebody has been dying, or as I found out after that somebody died. Connor acts very strangely when he gets to somebody's house. And this is probably like the fourth time in my neighborhood that
Mhm.
this has happened. And Connor has responded in that way that I'm starting to notice now. What's going on, Connor? When I see him behave in that way. And I think it's because he has the ability, as I do as an empath, so does he.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And he feels the energy that is on that property.
Yeah.
So I think the reason he's sniffing a lot more when he's out is because he's just not looking for a place to pee. He's working when he goes for a walk. You
Right.
know, he's connecting. And as much as I connect with other people, I think Connor connects with situations. And I think a lot of other animals do that too. And we just don't give them credit for that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really beautiful how animals have that ability. You know how we have our chakra system, right? We have our major chakras, we have our minor chakras. Animals, they have these additional chakras that we don't as humans. And that also opens them up to being able to have that. I like to call it like a hypersensitive ability. They have a sensing chakra, which is near the bridge of the nose. It's kind of in between the nose and their in between their eyes, and that gives them this really amazing ability to sense and know. And on their paw pads and their ears, they have some minor chakras there as well that really help. Like they've done really cool studies with animals in being able to um detect. Well, we know about the animals that can detect, you know, things at the border, or they can detect disease or things like
Or
that,
natural disasters and
or
stuff.
natural disasters.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like they had like the tornadoes and the earthquakes, and before they would come, animals would start behaving differently.
Right.
They would start whining and crying, or the wild animals would actually go to, you know, before a tsunami, they went to higher ground because they knew,
Mhm.
right? And it's like they have this ability, and they have it's natural and it's innate to them.
Mhm.
They can teach us a lot.
For sure. For sure.
They sure can. They sure can. Without a doubt, they can teach us a lot. But we have to choose to listen to them.
That's right. Like, can you imagine what it would be like? And I like to do this with Nemo when we go walking. So Nemo's my beautiful soul friend. I always say we're attached at the hip. And he's 6.5 pounds of love. He's my soul friend in Chihuahua form. And when we go for a walk, I like go, what's it like to see what you see, to smell what you smell. And I actually make myself, kind of energetically shrink down so that I can kind of walk along beside him and actually see through his eyes. And like just the things that, like, can you imagine what it is that they see, that we're so used to standing up, however
Yeah.
tall we are, and seeing, from our view. What about an animal's view? Think about that ant and what they sense or hear or know, or I don't know if ants can actually hear, but you know what I mean? Like how they are going through their experience in physical form as ant. Like it blows my mind. It's just so amazing.
Well, it blows my mind that Connor can find a piece of gum on a field of grass.
Oh yeah.
Like it's a beacon saying
Yeah,
it's
like
over
it's flashing saying, "Come and get me." And I think, oh my goodness. But yeah, they can teach us so much, and they have the ability to know so many things, even on a spiritual level, even on a soul level.
Yeah.
And what do they want to teach us with that?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's so exciting to think of that. So my next question for you would be, have you changed what you think about, do animals have a soul?
Have I changed what I think about? Oh my
Like
gosh.
how you
Oh
I
yes,
thought I knew the
absolutely.
answer.
Absolutely. Yeah, because when I was taught that as a child, I couldn't understand. I just did not, I believed it because that was the teacher that told me that. And I knew that, well, that's an adult, and usually adults know, but it didn't feel right. It felt icky inside. It felt kind of, and I'm talking as a small child would feel, like, you know what I mean? Like I'm like that aspect of me, it just felt icky. It was like there's no way that could not be, but I just didn't understand, so I just went with that. But it was the life experiences and the stuff that's told me what, you know I was talking about stories, and what my story is, and how there's many different stories. And now that I work directly with animals in the capacity that I do now, there's absolutely and I'm never going to say, oh yes, I'm 100% right all the time and everything I say is all absolutely correct. I am wrong, and I will never say I'm always correct. What animals have taught me, what they've shown me, what's come through in many sessions and communications and different opportunities to work with animals and the humans who love them, there is definitely a soul experience in animal form. Definitely. Definitely.
I think it's all about it. Bunny and I have spoke about this in in a different podcast. It's all about the stories that we've been told as a child and in our upbringing or as an adult. The stories that we believe, the coats that we put on, and if somebody in authority told us that animals were less than us and animals did not have a soul that only humans do, you take that as truth,
Right.
unless something inside you says, I wonder if that's true. I wonder. And that's where now, for me, I tell people all the time, in many aspects of things, I'm open to the possibility that we don't know
We don't?
everything. I'm coming at 64 years of age, I'm coming to the understanding that we as human beings, even though we've been told many times that we're, pretty smart and we know things, I'm open to the understanding that we only know a tiny smidge of what is really out there.
Yeah.
Only a tiny smidge.
So true, isn't it?
Yeah.
And how cool is that? Because
Very.
we think we know a lot. But what powerful experience must really be out there if we only know some of it?
Mm-hmm.
And what are we missing if we limit ourselves to only those things that we know about? If I had never met you and learned that animals can communicate, I would have just spent the rest of my life thinking they didn't.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of having this beautiful relationship with animals that I do have.
Right.
Sometimes just bugs and birds and completely different relationships. And how great is it that generations to come, because of your teaching, can learn that right off top,
Mm.
can always be taught that animals do understand.
Yeah.
Animals have a purpose. Animals have a reason to be here and things to teach us just as much as we do.
And for a little
Absolutely.
segue into this, because I was gonna say this, what can you offer, people who come across this podcast that have never thought about animal communication? What are some things that they could do to kind of open that up, or maybe some kind of experience, some kind of way that they can open that channel between themselves and animals, either their own or the wild ones in nature or anything like that? Is there
Yeah.
something that you can suggest that people do to see if this is something they can kind of get on board with?
Absolutely. And this is where it gets really fun because we take things so seriously, right?
Yeah.
Me included. Like I'll find myself always, have to be serious and have to be right. And it's that opening up of becoming curious. So the very, very first thing that anyone can do is just become curious, because when we become curious about our animals and the animals, whether they're in the wild, whether they're the animals in our home, once we become curious and start looking at, is there more to this? How can I now begin to understand this more about my dog or my cat or my rabbit or my horse or whoever, right? And meanwhile, that dog or cat or rabbit or horse is saying, no, that's my human. It's my
Yes.
human. But it's becoming curious, because what happens is when we become curious, we expand, right? We start to expand. And I'm all about energy. I'm all like, if you give me a world of energy because I can see energy, I can feel energy.
Yep.
It's kind of like, if we could live in a world of energy, I would be so at home.
Yeah.
Right? And so, so if you hear me talk about energy, it's just because I can really relate to that. But let's talk about us talking again. We're moving our mouths, we're articulating these sounds, we are creating these words that we've come to understand as meaning of certain things, because that's the meaning that we have attached to it. I'm talking with my hands right now, I'm moving them around, I'm smiling, I'm doing this, right? We're all communicating through body language. So we're doing verbal and nonverbal communication is what we understand. I like simple. I like to, I'm a master at making things hard and difficult. So I like it when I can be simple. So if we make things simple and we look at the communication that we're doing, what we're really doing when we're talking and doing this verbal and nonverbal communication, let's break it down, make it very, very simple. We're exchanging energy together. The energy just looks like what it is that we're doing, right? So when we can take away the hows and the whats and all of that and just simply share energy together with an animal. And what I mean by that, because if people are saying, okay, well, it makes sense, but well, how do I share energy, right? Great question. How do you share energy? It's kind of like just being aware, setting that intention and becoming curious, sitting with your animal, and don't say a word. Just allow your interaction together and allow their eyes to look at you, see what it is that they're doing, whether you're playing, whether you're walking. It's actually just becoming present. And through that, the doors can start to open, right? So we don't have to make this hard. We can make it very, very simple. And then from there, it's kind of understanding that when we can actually just share that energy together, we will actually start to sense, whether it's through kind of having an understanding, whether it's a feeling. For a lot of us, it's a feeling.
Yeah.
Sometimes we might get images that come into our mind, or we might get words that come forward, that type of thing. But once we do that, usually it's feeling. We start to feel something different. And there's different things that we can do. On my website, anybody can go there. Just go to
Mhm.
thegalspeaks.com. And there's a free animal communication or a connection kit
Mhm.
that anybody can download. And it gives you like games and exercises and things that you can do with your pet. And you don't have to just do it with you and that animal. You can do it together, like if you have other family members. And there's things that you can do to actually help bridge this. Um, I really think that, Bunny, coming back to your question, because I have a tendency when I get asked a question, I tend to go on and on and on
That's
about
okay.
stuff, and I give a long answer to.
You're talking to Bunny here. We're good. We're good. We're good. You can go off to 10 things, and then did that to Maggie today. Went off to 10 things and then said, "Oh, and by the way, that's why." She goes, "Oh yeah, that's why we started talking about this." Right? So, it's fine.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, well, thank you for understanding.
Yes.
Yeah, so really it's expanding, right? It's
Mhm.
expanding that awareness, and it's becoming curious about it and knowing that there's something more.
Mhm.
And if you're not sure, it could just be like, is there something more?
Right.
I wonder what else could be here with Fluffy or Fido or whoever,
Mhm.
right? It's just starting there, and I think it's really coming back to that curiosity,
Mhm.
because when we're curious, when we ask questions, we expand. When we
Right.
say I don't know how, when we say this doesn't work, when we say I'm afraid, which are all valid things to feel, but
Mhm.
we do contract when we say that.
Right.
So sometimes we might say I don't know how to do this with Fluffy, but you know what, maybe Fluffy, I wonder if Fluffy can help me. Fluffy, can you help me with this?
Right.
We expand, right? And so really doing just simple things like that, that's where I would always say to start,
Yeah.
because there's different ways that we can train ourselves and we can get to understand better and how communication
Right.
works in this way, because it's a way that we're not taught in school.
Mhm.
But it all starts there. It all starts with really just exchange that energy together.
Well, I think most people who are pet parents or pet companions, the humans to the to the pets, they will know intuitively that they do have connections, right? Like, so many people be like, every time that I'm sad, my cat will come and lay on top of me. And like, it's like they know what you need without you having to, as you say, verbally speak it. Also, well, I just want to say something that does happen that I tend to notice. I do have my grand puppy Bean, and I have two cats of my own, Ebony and Asker. And anytime that I've been in communication with you, like when we were taking courses and everything, they're around me. They come around when you're on the screen, and they're doing that again. So Bean's right behind the computer, laying right here. Ebony was just walking through the house, meowing, meowing, like going through. And so, and actually, I learned through our animal communication that she does that to cleanse. She does it like kind of like putting sage through my house. What she does is she does meowing throughout the house, because she would do it in the basement at 4 a.m. And you're like, what are you doing? Like, go to sleep, cat. But now I learned. And then now it was like, oh, thank you. So I changed that to like, instead of being kind of annoyed by what she was doing, saying, oh, you're doing that for us. Like, thank you for doing that. So yeah, so the energy, like people will just kind of maybe, like you say, stay curious and don't talk yourself out of what you're experiencing with your pet. You are having a connection with that animal, and maybe not even just a pet. Some people, you'll see a random a horse at a petting farm, or at a regular farm or something, and all of a sudden you just look in their eyes and you just have that instant connection, and it's undeniable, like so just don't talk yourself out of, I think, those kind of situations,
And it's
for
so
sure.
easy to do, right? Because we'll
Yes.
question it. We'll question, did I
Yeah.
really understand it that way? Or did I just make that up? Or,
Mhm.
all those things. And I love how you brought that up. And um, another helpful thing that could help us too is kind of like we are taught that this brain in our head is what runs the show, right? We're taught that, this is what we need to use. And we do, don't get me wrong. We need our brain. We need that, right? So but we actually have more than one brain.
Mm-hmm.
And so, when we were just an egg being fertilized, right, and going through that growing stage into a fetus, it actually starts where it starts in our gut. And a lot of us have heard that our gut is really they say it's our second brain, or sorry, they say it's our first brain, and our head is our second brain. But what happens is, when we're forming, neural cells actually start forming in the gut area, and then come and form up the spine and actually form into our heart.
Mm-hmm.
And our heart is actually functioning like a brain for us. Mm-hmm. And then the neural cells continue up the spine, goes up to the spinal column, to the skull, and then comes our head brain. Yet
such chills, you say this.
Me too.
So it's like, that's our last brain to be formed, yet it's our first brain that we always go to. Mm-hmm. Right? So it's kind of like, so we need our head brain. Mm-hmm. I need this head brain in order to talk, right? I need this head brain in order to come on Zoom today and talk with you guys. Like, I need this to be able to do things. But I also remember that when I'm communicating with animals, if I stay in my head brain, I'm not going to get very far. Mm-hmm. I need to allow my head brain to be here, but then I drop down into my heart.
Right.
And I work it with my heart center, but remembering that I also have the gut, right? So let's call it the three brains. Mm-hmm. So when we take our gut brain and our head brain and we meet in the middle, where do we land? Mm-hmm. We land at the heart space. And when we can open up the heart space, that's where we begin to hear and see and sense and feel and all of that. That's where all of that comes from.
Even taste.
Even taste, yes.
And smell. Like, I remember when we were doing the animal communication course, and I was communicating with a horse, and I could taste grass.
Yes,
or I tasted like a salt.
Yes.
I tasted like a lot of salt, and I was like, I don't want to taste. But it could have been other things that they made me taste. So I was happy for some of those. But yeah, like, just remembering to use everything and to put it through the heart. That is.
Yeah. That's they always say you don't know where to go, left or right, or do this or that. We'll just let's meet in the middle and let's figure out where to go. Well, same thing. Let's just meet in the middle. And that's our heart space, right? That's our space of truth. I call this space it's like our truth detector.
Yes.
Right. It's kind of like we know it's that gut instinct, but it's also that feeling of it, right? It comes within that heart center. So it's a powerful center.
And that's important, not even just with animals, but with humans. Maggie's nodding because I'm sure she was going in that same. It's like, that's where we do. It's heart-centered love. That's like the whole reason of being. The whole like, if you want to say your purpose in life is love. Self-love, love for others, like just love and connection. And it's just opening that heart space and having all of that. I don't know. This is just like, it's just awe-inspiring. And I do know that, when Maggie was talking about, we were talking to you about all the stuff, but I actually, the first course I ever took with you was your empath course. It was a long time ago.
Yes.
And I remember, it was new into my, I always had intuition and all that, but I just didn't know how I was using it. Like, my brain didn't know how I was using it. So I took some courses to kind of understand things. And I remember, and I use this often, I use this even, I think I used it a couple of days ago. Sometimes my stomach brain will give me signals and I'm not sure what it is. And so it goes up to my brain and my head brain, and my head brain starts to spin on a reel, REEL, a story of something that could potentially be giving me this. But I realized that sometimes it's not mine. And that was something that you taught us in the empath course, that sometimes it's not mine. And so I would ask the heart. That would be the one that you'd say, is this mine? Is this, what that kind of thing. And I would actually, when I would ask my heart, like, is this mine? Is this something I need to be worried about? and my stomach would calm down instantly, and I'd be like, oh, it isn't mine, I'm feeling something else.
Right.
And so it was like, wow. And like, just you've taught me so much stuff in so many different ways, and you continue to teach, and I absolutely adore adore you. Adore
You,
everything
Bunny.
about you. Yeah,
Oh, I feel the same way about
much
you.
love.
I just, yeah.
And I think for our listeners today, it's important to acknowledge that although we're talking about animal communication today, this all ties in to universally.
Mhm.
And it's just like we said, Mary Beth said off at the top, when she first started talking to that fish, that the world was in some turmoil. And even today, as we're putting out this podcast and you're going to be listening to this podcast, the world's in some turmoil. And as Mary Beth said, if we can just come to center,
Mhm.
into that heart brain, we can trust that everything is going to be okay. We
Mhm.
can trust that if we come from that place of love and understanding, we don't have to live in fear. We don't have to live in the head brain.
Right.
We don't have to continually go for that kind of information, that we can trust that. So even though this is the power of pets, this is all about the power of listening to your intuition. And it's all the same, whether it's pets, whether it's animals, whether it's trees, whether it's the water, whatever it is, that communication is at heart center.
Mhm.
And it all makes sense. And you're here today to hear that, to come together to that heart center. That heart is our superpower. That love is our superpower.
Mhm.
Oh my gosh, Maggie, perfectly, perfectly. Wow, articulated in such an eloquent, heartfelt way. That is amazing.
Well, thank you for being with us today, Mary Beth, and allowing us to expand a little bit more on animal communication and to just be curious. So we invite all of you listening to just be curious. Just be open to the opportunity that possibly your pet has more to tell you than you think.
For sure.
And just be open to that and watch. One thing that I noticed is once Connor started to communicate with me and I started to notice, you notice it more.
Mhm.
So once it happens to you once, you don't have to believe right away. You can just say, oh, well, that's just my animal. Yeah, you can do that. But then he'll do it again. He'll do it again. He'll do it again. And when you're open to that curiosity, you can't make this stuff up.
And even if you are making it up, hey, you know what? It's for your good, so it doesn't. Who cares? That's the way. Whenever I thought about that, like if it is just my imagination, it's my imagination in a love space. Perfectly
Right.
okay with me. That's fine. If it is, I mean, there's things that happen, like we talk about all the time. There's things that happen in my life that if I was to take it to a Hollywood producer and say I want to make a movie about this, they'd say that's too outlandish. Nobody would ever believe it. But that stuff actually happens in life. So yeah, why? Like I couldn't
Well,
even think
we
about
already know that the Hollywood producers believe that fish can talk to you.
Right, well, this is
So
what I'm saying, right? We
that's
got
already out there.
there's tons, right? So that's the whole thing. And I know my eldest son, his favorite movie was Good Boy, when he was young, and it was all about and a planet that was just dogs that sent they sent the dogs down here to be with companions with humans, and there was like an alien ship and like one crashed, and then because the little boy touched the ship he could communicate, like actually hear the dog talk. It was so fun. It
Oh
was
my
such a fun movie.
gosh.
He watched it
Yeah.
over and over and over again. It was so fun and lots of funny little, oh, so good.
Everybody out there is going to be going to look for that movie now.
Such a good
Me
movie.
too. This is the
Such
first
a
time
good
I heard about that one. I'm
such
going
a
to check
good
that one
movie.
out.
He watched it so much. It was crazy. But that's the thing. And then even when you think about that, then there's like the Buddies movie. Like there's tons of movies that we have with our animal friends that, you know, where they could communicate with us and all that. And it's just incredible. Now, of course, you know, you did mention your website. Where can people find you? What things are you doing that they can reach out and get a hold of you? I'll also put it in the description, but
Awesome. Yeah, thanks so much for asking.
mhm,
The best way to get in touch with me, you can go to thegalspeaks.com. You
mhm,
can email me at thegalspeaks@gmail.com.
mhm.
And you can come listen to my podcast if you want to learn more about the many different ways that animals uh, bless our lives and the
Mhm.
lessons and all the things with them. It's called Awaken with Animals, and it's all about activating a deeper and meaningful life with them.
Incredible. Yeah.
On that note, Bunny, tell us how they can reach us.
Yeah. So if
And
you want to
again,
get a
thank you so much for
yes,
joining
thank
us
you.
today, Marybeth. This was a really fun chat. And
Oh, I had
as
so much
always,
fun.
love talking to you.
Thank you
Absolutely.
so much.
So much fun. I could talk to you for like a week and I would not even have a problem. But anyways, we have to go. So if you want to reach out to us, go ahead and find us on our website at aboveandbeyond.com or by email at aboveandbeyond@gmail.com. And as always, you will find us on YouTube, Facebook, Spotify, and everywhere else you get podcasts. So
Thanks
that's
so
it.
much. Have a great day, everybody. Talk to you later. Bye.
Bye.